Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Saturday evening as we take a look at the tropics, and a little bit of a slight surprise in that the two tropical waves that we've been looking at, the one in the far eastern Atlantic and the one in the eastern, now in the central Caribbean, it's the one in the central Caribbean that has gotten better organized today. And if you look at the latest visible satellite loop, you can see there's actually evidence of a little bit of turning here. A little bit of a circulation that's developing. Certainly think there might be one at mid levels. Now, whether there's one at low levels remains to be seen, but something seems to be trying to develop here as the system tracks on slowly toward the west. It's pretty far south in the Caribbean. It's south of 15 north. This is Central America here, and it would have to somehow move more northwest. Otherwise, it's going to wind up making landfall into Central America, but there is time for this system to develop as it moves toward the west. And here it is on the wider view. And let me just give it a little refresh here. And you can see it here, right in there is where we think there might be a little bit of turning going on. Here's the wave out in the tropical Atlantic. You can see how stretched out and elongated it is. And actually, it looks like part of it has fractured away and moved further west. You can see it here, kind of accelerating a bit away from another area of convection out to the east of it. That one to the east, the area to the east looks like it's increased a little bit today. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But in terms of favorable conditions for development, the system in the Caribbean here probably has a better upper air profile for it to work with, as opposed to the one out in the Atlantic overall. I think this area here is still favorable for development, but there are issues, and we'll see that on the water vapor imagery. If you've been following this during the week, the upper low that was in the Atlantic had disappeared for a while. Now another one has formed, and you can see it there spinning away. It's not nearly as dominant as the other upper air low was, but it's dominant enough. You're getting strong west-southwest winds being produced, and eventually this wave is going to run into this if the upper low does not get out of the way. In the western Caribbean, conditions are a bit more favorable. We don't really see a strong shear here. We do see strong southwesterlies across the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico, but south of 25, I think the upper air conditions look a little more favorable for development. Then the question is, does it go inland and then move straight westward with this out into the Pacific side, or does it go more northwest and eventually find its way out into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico? Actually, most of the afternoon hurricane models that you can see here wind up keeping it mostly over water, crossing it over the Yucatan Peninsula, and then eventually into the Southwest Gulf. But because of what's going on aloft, the track will continue to be mostly to the west, and you'll wind up with a landfall in Mexico, unless it moves inland down in here somewhere, in which case it may just stay there and fall apart. Although even the one model that does that does eventually take it back up into the Southwest Gulf. The European model has been bullish with this for the last number of days. In fact, it's the European model that has done nothing with the system in the Atlantic, and you can see it there. That's the Atlantic system, reflecting that little closed isobar. And here's the one in the Northwest Caribbean, which it takes over the Yucatan and then develops it probably into a strong tropical storm before it moves inland. And notice the Atlantic system disappears. And I think the main reason for that is the strong upper air storm that's sitting out in the Atlantic is just going to really not get out of the way, and that when this wave gets back west of 50, it's going to run into some hostile upper air conditions and get ripped apart. So we're going to keep our eyes on the Caribbean system. That seems to be the one that's of greater interest now, unless something radically changes to shift the attention out into the Atlantic. Even the National Hurricane Center in their latest outlook has increased the probability of the Caribbean system developing and decreased the probability of the one on the Atlantic side. On the Pacific side, really not too much happening. There's a tropical depression that's off this view of this. Actually, this might be it right here. And you can see it's a pretty sheared out system. There's a low-level circulation, but there's very little thunderstorm activity with it, and that's just going to probably weaken and disappear and go goodbye into the graveyard. Otherwise, the Pacific tropics look pretty quiet. It looks like we have a little disturbance here south of Hawaii along 10 degrees north that's moving westward, of little consequence there, and that's about it as far as the Pacific is concerned. With respect to the eastern satellite view, we've got this cold front that's moved on through. You can see that front extends pretty far south again, and we've got some cooler, drier air coming in behind it. But we also have the next weather system that's getting ready to come out of the plains, and that's going to be moving eastward. So that's going to bring some rain or showers into the east on Monday. So it looks like Sunday at least is going to play out nice, but then Monday we're going to get into some rain and showers as low pressure actually is going to wind up going just underneath the New York City, Long Island area. So that's going to probably create some onshore flow conditions. And in the west, pretty much the same old story. We've got the morning low clouds on the west coast burning off. Another summer day in the west, another hot day in the west. And the monsoonal thunderstorms will probably fire up again in the southwest, as has been the case for the last number of days. So we're going to shift over to the GFS model and get close. Let's go a little closer so we can see what's going on. And whoops, I wasn't supposed to do that. I'm supposed to do that. Okay, great. Start back from the beginning from today. Here's our nice day for tomorrow. And here's that low pressure that extends out from Texas northeastward into the old frontal boundary that pushes some rain or showers here by Monday morning. And then continuing on and off, a little low develops in northern Virginia. So we'll have some on and off rain or showers probably into Monday night. Then weather conditions improve after that. Another dry, cool high, relatively speaking, comes in for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we still have a stalled frontal boundary to the south. So there'll probably be another little wave and some overrunning potential here for later Thursday night into Friday. But no real hot weather in sight here, certainly not for this week. And going into next weekend, we'll see if the weather pattern changes in the upper air. We're going to take a look at that and see where that takes us. But I don't really see any signs of heat, prolonged heat and humidity anytime through the next 10 days or so. Let me just push it out a little further. Here's another front that edges on through around mid-month. And that is the pattern, folks. We keep getting these weather fronts every couple of days, and that pretty much remains the norm and unchanged. For the last couple of months, it's been this way. So we'll look at the wide view of the upper air. You know, one of the big differences in the models has been how it's been handling this ridge out in the Atlantic, which winds up building off the southeast coast. You can see here's the Bermuda High, but you still have, you know, this endless parade of troughs coming in to the eastern part of the United States. So the high only extends into the far southeast coast of the U.S. and over Florida, while we still have a pretty active jet stream flow from North Carolina on northward. By the way, excuse me, this upper air, this type of setup with this ridge the way it is and as strong as it is, would favor weather systems traveling in the tropics to track further east and further south than they otherwise would. And I think that's going to be the case into mid-month. Here we are, by the way, speaking of mid-month, and you can see another upper low forms in the northern plains and upper Midwest. The ridge tries to build into the southeast rather strongly, but it's kind of narrow. You still have an active jet over the northern parts of the mid-Atlantic and the northeastern part of the U.S., and that just continues on and on. It's like a broken record, really. And we'll look at it a bit wider. And let's just back it up as it all loads. Okay, so there's our jet stream. Here's our upper high out in the Atlantic. Our ridge in the west getting a little flattened to some degree. The northern part of the ridge is building, the southern part not so much. Still evidence of it here as we move toward the end of next week, and then still ridging in the west. A little ridge off that Atlantic ridge off the southeast coast, and there are your shortwave troughs that keep rotating through one after another after another. Amazing how very stubborn this pattern has been. It's going to be fascinating to see where this goes as we once we get through into mid-August and go into the latter part of August and September, because if that troughing in the east continues to hold, it'll mean two things: cooler, more robust air masses coming down, and it would also mean that if any tropical system were to develop and it would time out with a trough coming into the eastern states, it would increase a possibility of some kind of tropical event somewhere. That's just a general statement on my part. It's not based on anything specific. I'm certainly not predicting anything specific here. Just making an observation based on what the upper air pattern looks like, and the fact that it really doesn't look like it's going to be changing in the broad sense anytime soon. So we'll keep you up to date on what the Hurricane Center does with this evening. We'll chat a little bit just as soon as we're done here. If you weren't able to come out to Lindenhurst today, to Lindenhurst Library, Monday at 7 o'clock in Islip on Long Island in New York, I will be at the Connecticut Library. Okay, so you should be able to hear me. Somebody give me a usual acknowledgement that you can hear me, and we can go ahead. But yes, I just wanted to say I was at Lindenhurst at the library today giving a talk on hurricanes and tropical storms and weather in general. And if you're on Long Island and you missed that, I will be on Monday at the Connecticut Library at 7 o'clock. That's in Islip in the town of Bohemia, about halfway out if you're traveling, exit 57, and then just put it in your GPS if you happen to be on Long Island. And I think most of you are not. I think some of you are actually from foreign nations, so which is great. The tropics. It's funny how it's turned out that the system in the Caribbean is going to probably wind up being the one that develops and not the one in the Atlantic. But as we showed you on the water vapor loop tonight, that another big upper low is coming down into the south central tropical Atlantic, and that is going to create hostile wind conditions across the Atlantic basin for tropical storm development. Now, the last one sat there for 2+ weeks. I don't know if this one will. This one looks maybe a little less intense as the other one did, but may wind up doing the same thing where it just kind of goes back and forth, goes a little west, goes a little east, and then eventually lifts up and out. But we're just going to have to wait and see how that plays. The Caribbean system, the strength of the bridge and the narrowness of the ridge, it's an east-west ridge, is forcing this to track more west than anything else. So I don't think that this is going to be a system that's going to wind up in the Gulf of Mexico and threatening the United States. I think this goes across the Yucatan Peninsula and then from there into the Southwest Gulf and then into Mexico. I think the models have the right idea on that. The European has been bullish all along on the Caribbean system and not on the Atlantic system, and whereas the other models were kind of the other way around. So now the GFS seems to have jumped on board with the idea that this system is going to wind up intensifying in the Southwest Gulf when it gets there in the next 4 days or so. Very funny how these things all happen to play out. You see one thing on the long range, and it turns out to be something completely different. And in fact, what was really interesting was somebody sent me, and I'm going to see if I have it somewhere, and I'm going to show it maybe the next time. But a meteorologist went back. He plotted weather model positions last year for Hurricane Matthew in the long range. And it's really funny because when you look at the map, there's a cluster of tracks all offshore, and then there's a cluster of tracks all in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, moving inland in the southeast and up the Appalachians, and a big gap over eastern Florida, just offshore eastern Florida, the southeast coast of the United States, up to North Carolina, where there were no early forecasts in that gap zone. And that's exactly where the Matthew wound up going, in the area where none of the long-range model forecasts showed it. So it was pretty interesting to see that. I was actually quite surprised to see an outcome so glaring like that was. I'm going to try and find it. Somebody posted it to me on Facebook yesterday, and maybe tomorrow I can show it to you. But it really, really is very, very interesting how the long-range models just had no clue with regards to the track. So when you see this stuff in the long range, please take it with a huge grain of salt. Raymond, is there a threat for rain in the Northeast on Monday? Yeah, it looks more like overrunning. It's not. Doesn't look like a warm front, cold front kind of stuff. Doesn't look like we're going to get into a warm sector here. Probably get more overrunning, maybe some warm frontal thunderstorms with that. But I'm thinking it's probably going to be more on and off rain or showers Monday night into Tuesday. I hope everybody had a great Saturday, and hopefully you'll have a great Sunday. Oh, I just got another post here. Delvin, will the trough mean an early outbreak for fall in late August? Well, you know what? If the trough stays in the east like this, these highs that are coming down and these shots of cool air are going to get more and more robust over time. But that's a big if. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I'm just playing the trend as your friend and staying with persistence. But if that trend stays the same, it wouldn't at all surprise me to see some a fairly robust cool air masses come down toward the end of the month. But the upper ridge off the Atlantic could build back westward. That's always possible, and that might put my theory, put a nail in the coffin of my theory. We'll have to wait and see. All right, folks, have a great Saturday evening and a good Sunday to you. We'll be back here tomorrow with more, especially if we get some development here with this tropical system in the Caribbean, or on the long shot chance that the tropical system in the Atlantic gets fired up. Otherwise, stay well, and we will talk to you tomorrow.